Okay, all right. Thanks everyone for joining. Let's get started. Today we're going to have the version 2.8 system demo. And the first person up will be Trey, and it will be on the VSC Explorer.
All right, I'm just going to share my screen.
Go ahead.
All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Trey Yelovich, member of the Zowe Explorer squad, and today I'm going to demonstrate some enhancements that were introduced with version 2.8 of Zowe Explorer. These Zowe Explorer enhancements focus on the jobs tree view and are specific to spool files. The first enhancement that I'd like to show is the change in behavior when clicking on spool files in the jobs tree view. So first, let's take a look at a job that I've built using JCL. As you can see, this JCL executes a bash script, and this is the bash script, and it simply echoes some statements and has some sleep calls in between. This is meant to emulate a long-running job and is solely for demonstration purposes. I will now submit this job, and then we can check out the output in the jobs tree view. As you can see, the newly submitted job has appeared in the jobs tree view, and here's the standard output spool file for this job. As you can see, there's already some initial output for this spool file. In previous versions of Zowe Explorer, when clicking on the spool file again in the tree view, the contents of the file did not update in the editor. This has been fixed with version 2.8, as I will now demonstrate. As you can see, once I clicked on the spool file, the new output has been added to the spool file in the editor. Another enhancement to the jobs tree view is the polling functionality. Polling can be used on demand with a keybind or automatically when given a configurable time interval. Users can configure this keybind by clicking on the settings icon in the bottom left and selecting keyboard shortcuts. If you search for the command poll content in active editor, you can configure this keybind. It's currently set to F5, but the user can set it to any key of their choice. Now I will go back to the spool file and press the F5 key to show that the polling functionality works on demand. When I press the F5 key, you can also see a brief status bar message that appears at the bottom of VS Code, showing that the spool file is being pulled. Finally, I will initialize automatic polling on this spool file. To initialize polling for a spool file, right-click on the spool file and select Start Polling. From here, Zowe Explorer will present an input box to confirm the polling interval for this file. In this case, I will set the polling interval to 3000 milliseconds, or 3 seconds. The minimum polling interval is 1 second. Once I press Enter, polling will start for the spool file. Since the job is not yet finished, watch as Zowe Explorer pulls in changes to the spool file. You can also see that the polling functionality adds a P for a polling decorator to the Editor tab, as well as for the spool file in the tree view. You can also see that when I highlight over the spool file, there is a tooltip that shows that the spool file is polling as well as the specified time interval that was entered. Watch as Zowe Explorer continues to pull down the latest changes from this spool file. All right, now that the script is complete, a user can stop polling a spool file by right-clicking on the spool file that's being pulled and selecting Stop Polling. The poll decoration P is no longer visible in the Editor tab, as well as in the tree view, and the spool file is no longer being pulled on an interval. And with that, those are some of the new enhancements for the jobs tree view of Zowe Explorer. As the script mentioned, you can start using Zowe Explorer's polling functionality in version 2.8. Are there any questions?
Yeah, hey Trey, I have one question. Awesome job. I love that. Couple of things about if you have let's say you're opening a 500-page spool file and you've already scrolled down to perhaps line 300, which might be at the top. When it goes and fetches the extra rows, does it change your scroll position or does it keep you where you are? Does it always bleed into the bottom?
Hi, Joe. That's a good question. I have not been able to test this functionality with a very long job just due to the nature of having to build a JCL file that does have a significant amount of output. But the way that it was implemented is that it updates the content for that document with the latest changes, and it shouldn't make any changes to your position in the editor, as well as like where the editor appears. As you could see, as the file was being pulled, the editor tab stayed in the same position and nothing had changed with the cursor positioning. I can also do some additional tests to confirm this, but as far as I'm aware, it should not alter your position in the document.
Okay, and one more geeky question from me. If you did have a very large file, and let's say the first request got the first 500 rows or something, would the next request go and get 510, 520, or are you able to just get the extra rows that have been appended on? I'm not quite sure whether you can do that with the API, or I'm quite happy to play around and see how that works. So.
Sure. So as far as I'm aware, there is no API that returns the newest content for a spool file. I may be speaking too soon on this, but the APIs that we do have available, it just pulls down all of the contents of the spool file. However, if there is an API endpoint that does pull down only the newest contents, we can adapt this pulling functionality to use that new behavior.
Great, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Any other questions?
It's awesome. I can't wait to start showing this to customers. Good job.
All right, thank you. Next, Fernando will be demonstrating some enhancements that were introduced for downloading spool files.
Thank you, Trey. I hope to do a good job as you. Gee, that was awesome. All right, let me share my screen real quick. And the two things I'm going to be showing here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see your screen.
Eventually.
Okay, now we see it. Yep.
There we go. Thank you. My computer just froze for a second. All right, you should be seeing VS Code on a sandbox, right? There we go. For my portion of the demo, here I'm going to focus on a few items that were a few features that would add it to the spool files as well. It is around the download of individual spool files, or download of individual spool files and the whole job in binary format. Before these enhancements, right, the only thing you had was the ability to download all the spool files in text format, right? Now you can do the same for binary. I'm going to show that in a second. And you're probably going to sort of notice the difference between each implementation, right? And how that's beneficial or not to the user, right? You can also do that in the individual spool files. You can do it with multiple, right? You also have the ability to download both of them in binary format, or just in plain text. For the purpose of the demos, you just want to keep it like very simple. This is going to be sort of all the content you're going to see, right? Hopefully this is big enough. That's probably better. This is just a USS file that I have in like binary format, and this is a very simple job that I'm just printing that out to STD out, right? So every time I run that job, I'm going to have a spool DD, right? This is 532. Should be able to just refresh this. A new job appeared, right? And the last spool file, which will be my binary data, right? The contents of my table, my little table that you saw here, right? In this file. That's what it's trying to show me, right? But since it is in binary format, can't really display that. But what I can do here is quickly say download. Yeah, I'm just going to select the same demo folder. And here it is, 5 through V2. Should be able to see that data, right? That's sort of from a more interactive perspective, right? That's like half of my demo. Again, you can continue to download each individual spool content or the whole thing in binary or text. But then there was other requests, right, to be able to stream the data as it is coming in, right, from an API standpoint. I guess just for the purpose of the demo, I can show the whole thing or just select multiple. Open this goes well. Just gonna maybe make a new file, new directory. And here we should see the two jobs that I selected, each of them having the same kind of data, right? And moving on to then the API portion of the demo. Pardon me, I'm going to switch over to my local / remote environment here, but the same idea applies here where, again, this is just sort of doing some setup work for the script, getting the default profiles and whatnot, right? You saw this job already. I believe I downloaded it. Yeah, there it is. So I'm going to be using that same job for the purpose of the demo. And selecting the last spool file, right? That's all setup work. Before you only had the ability, again, as I mentioned, to download all the spool content. We made sure that in this enhancement, we also added the ability from an API standpoint, right, to be able to download that same content in binary format. Let me make this a little bigger. Oh, it's kind of weird. Which you also have to like specify a directory where to place the contents. We added the ability as well to download a single spool file, right? You also have to specify the directory. Might just do that for a quick demo, and I'm just going to run the script. Oops. Nope. There we go. And same contents again, right? Binary format. And last but not least, the very last enhancement here, the ability to stream the data as it is coming in, right? So all I'm doing really is creating Node.js streams, right? This is sort of the simplistic form, and you will see the data being sort of printed out to the console. Let me clear the terminal, run the script again. Oops. After saving it. Again, just creating Node.js streams. Another approach would be using the imperative way of streaming data, right? This is all pure like API information, right? But you can stream that to a file, right? So the output of this would be an imperative stream. Another way is creating a different type of Node.js stream. I know it's like a very complicated thing, but Node.js has done a very good job in recent years after Node 17 to introduce web streams. This imperative was not built on with that in mind. So it's to sort of make it leveraging the old ways of streaming data, right? Eventually it should. Oops, I forgot to save the file. There's a Node.js one, right? Same contents. And last but not least, imitating a socket-like connection where you can have streams that read and write data. This, again, will just print the information to the console. Save that. And that is about it. I just want to recap, right? The same functionality that is available through the UI with the ability to download in multiple single spool files in text or binary format. You have that same ability from an API's perspective, right? And you have a little more where in the APIs, again, this is not kind of like noticeable to the end user, because if you want to see data as it's coming in, you will enable trace feature, the polling, right? But for programmers, right, for developers, they might want to do all those kinds of things where they handle the data as it's coming in. That is all for the demo. And are there any questions, comments?
Hey, Fernando, that's awesome. I could have done with that 2 weeks ago. I was dealing with actually Joe Devlin, and we had a customer where there was something going where we had to debug it with ZSS, and we were getting a mixture of ZSS logging in Acidic, but then we were debugging the HTTP headers that were being logged in UTF-8, and we were getting this really weird hybrid, and we wanted to see the UTF-8, and we had to play all sorts of tricks. So there was like an icon, and it was just, and having that just at our fingertips would have been phenomenal, because you could just flip back and forth and you would see some bits in English and some bits in gobbledygook, and then vice versa.
Right.
So it'd be brilliant for that kind of hybrid. Great job. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for the feedback. And if there's no more questions, then I will turn it over to Timothy. All right. Up to you, Timothy.
Okay, thanks, Fernando. I will share my screen. So I'm going to be demoing a new setting that was added to Zowe Explorer for changing the location of log files. First, I'll show the old behavior that was present in Zowe Explorer version 2.7. So I'll launch Visual Studio Code. I already have Zowe Explorer installed here, but as you can see, nothing is loading or showing up in these trees. And the reason that it failed to load in this case is because my logs folder is read-only, and it was unable to successfully initialize. It's not very intuitive for a user, though, to understand that that is what happened. Like, there was no error shown, and I'd actually have to dig into the output of the extension host to be able to find the error telling me, if I scroll up enough here, there was an e-access error and there was permission denied to open the log. So we wanted to improve on this user experience. This was an enhancement driven by a customer request, where we had a customer who was rolling out a shared extensions folder to all their VS Code users. And so that folder was read-only or had limited access. And the default location where Zowe Explorer stores the logs is inside of this extensions folder, as you can see inside of the user home folder .vscode/extensions. And so since that location may be a read-only for some users, it was necessary for us to provide a means of then changing that location. So I will show what the new behavior is, opening up a second instance of VS Code that has Zowe Explorer 2.8 installed. And you can see right away here, I got a more useful error message telling me there was an error initializing the logger because of permission denied. And so now, as a Zowe Explorer user, I would be able to take advantage of a new setting that we've added. So I'll go into the VS Code settings. And there's a new setting under Zowe Explorer, which was not there previously, but we've just added. And so you can see here, I can configure the path to the Zowe Explorer logs folder. So I'll paste in here a directory path that I know I should have write access to on this system. And Zowe Explorer won't load immediately, even though typically changing this setting will take effect right away. But in this case, where Zowe Explorer already failed to load or failed to initialize, it will be necessary for me to just reload the VS Code window. So I'll do that quick. Just from the command palette, I will reload the VS Code window. And it should now load successfully. And so now I have access to my ZSMF profile because it is able to write logs to a folder that I have access to. And one more thing related to this I wanted to mention is that we did document this in our troubleshooting Zowe Explorer topic, we have information about what to do if you encounter a write access error either for the logs folder or also for the temporary downloads folder where Zowe Explorer will download datasets or USS files temporarily to your disk for you to make edits to them. And then we provide guidance on how to change the VS Code settings here as well. That's all for what I wanted to show. Are there any questions?
Yeah, that looked really good. Yeah. The one question I had, I love the search facility in the documentation. And whenever I see an error message, I always think if I search in the search bar, I see you have the PNG or a GIF of the EAC ESS message, and I was wondering, but if you search for that, in the search bar at the very top of the docs, the one given by the Algolia search, I don't think it searches into GIFs. So I was wondering, you might want to do another quick pull request and just have that in the. Sometimes it's nice to have that in the body of the markdown, close to the error message, just to let people coming in blind to sort of search and then come to this area. That would be my only extra thing.
Yeah, thanks. I like that idea.
Does that make sense? Yeah, it's always, yeah. So
yeah,
then they see that, there you go, you've got it. All right, thank you. Thanks so much for that. Yeah.
Yep.
Good job.
All right. Are there any other questions? If not, I'll be turning it over to Billy, I believe, to demonstrate some more enhancements that we made in Zowe Explorer for logging.
Hello. Let me share my screen. All right. Can everybody see my screen and hear me okay? My screen should be VS Code. All right. On top of Timothy's work with the alternate log location, we did some more work around logging and introduced an output logger for VS Code. That way users can view their logs in the Zowe space while they're working and not having to track down and open up a separate file to see what may have went wrong or troubleshoot any issues they run into. So, and we also made sure that it would recognize the Zowe CLI's log level. So it will compare our default log level upon installation of the 2.8, and our default is info, where Zowe CLI's default, I believe, is debug. So it does compare, and upon comparing, if nothing is found on the user system, no environment variable was set, then Zowe Explorer will just continue on with info as its default. If it does see an environment variable set like we see here, the user is going to be presented with a question. With what I have here, I just installed the 2.8 and I did the command here. I have not reloaded my Windows, so we should see the prompt. Here it says Zowe Explorer has a new VS Code logger with a default log level of info. It notices the Zowe CLI's log level is set at debug, and it asks the user if they would like the Zowe Explorer log level to be the same as the Zowe CLI's log level. The user will only be prompted with this a single time. As of right now, it will create a setting in the user settings after being presented. We do have some work going in for possible in-memory storage of some of these settings that we have that aren't really needed by the user, just by the extension itself. So if I update it, it will change the log level that I have set here in Zowe Explorer. And this is the setting that is now checked. It's a Boolean value. The CLI logger setting was presented. And if I scroll down to, okay, with the log level, you can see now that it is debug. Users can access their log level by going to the output view and then clicking on task and selecting Zowe Explorer. And now you can see in that output view, the logs were written here. It does mention at the top where the log can be found at. I had a setting set up to go into a directory on my desktop. If I was to remove that and refresh, it would go into the .vs code, the default value for VS Code extension logging. So users can easily find the location of their logs now. It does display the log level and then the logs that were presented, you know, as it moves through the code. So on top of that, we did add some information in our developers wiki. Let's see. So on top of the logging, I was going to show our wiki. We did some revamping here and moved a lot of our documentation out of our code into the repo. And this is where you can find our documentation on logging for the development process. So now that we have it in place and documented, as we move forward, we will be adding more logging and just different levels, just that way we can help these users and ourselves debug and investigate any issues. And so on top of the new wiki, the new logging, we did notice that Slack itself introduced bookmarks. So you'll see in some of our Slack channels, we've added some bookmarks. Our private squad channels got some quick links to our repo, the community repo, and the Linux Insight. Our public Zowe Explorer, we have some quick links to the Zowe docs, our issue handling where users can file a bug or put an enhancement request, and then a quick link to our wiki if people want to contribute to the project. So any questions, comments from anybody?
Hey, Billy, it's Gene. After your one-time prompt to say, oh, I'm going to put this in sync with the external environment variable, if my environment, if I change the external environment variable to something else, does this all start over again? You get a one-time prompt to get them back in sync?
No, it will not. Unfortunately, we could build on top of this. Right now, what it's going to look for is that setting that we have. So if I flip to the JSON view, you can see we had a new setting. The logger was presented, and that's been, you know, changed to true after I interact, the user interacts with it when a prompt jumps up the first time. So if this setting is ever removed from the settings.json and there is an environment variable that is different from the Zowe Explorer's set logging level, because this could be after, it doesn't necessarily have to go against its default, just whatever is set for the Zowe Explorer if it's different, and this is not present in the settings.json, the user will be prompted again.
Okay, I'm not sure if there's actual demand for that. I just wanted to make sure I understood the behavior. Thank you.
Yeah, Billy, I think this is great because you'll have more people extending the Zowe Explorer using this framework, right? Which is just helps from doing diagnostics. It's really good.
Yeah, as of right now, the logging functionality is within Zowe Explorer itself. We did create an issue from requests that this would eventually become part of the Zowe Explorer APIs. We didn't want to do it that way out of the box because, you know, we wanted to consider conformance around it.
Mm-hmm.
So we did set it as a possible V3 enhancement to externalize this logger, this output logger. And, you know, and it'll allow the extenders to work more in sync with Zowe Explorer, but we did want to wait to introduce that and be able to put some conformance rules around it possibly. We just haven't gone into, you know, more deeper discussions on that. We did create the issue and we have it attached to a V3 enhancement epic that we'll be working on over the next several months. All right, well, I will stop sharing and back to you, Nick. I am not sure who follows. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Billy. Okay, the next person would be Vladislav for the IntelliJ plugin.
Yeah, that's me. Okay, hope you see my screen now.
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you. So hello everyone, and today I'm gonna present the new development of my squad. It's a JCL IntelliJ plugin, and probably it will be the one of the Zowe projects in a short time. So the same presentation I will be presenting at the TSC call this Thursday. To make sure that everyone is aware of this project. So what is it about? Mostly the GCL plugin that we are developing for the IntelliJ platform is a code highlighting and auto-completion plugin that will make it possible to see the GCL code in the right colors in terms of highlighting some keywords or statements and so on. Our current state is like that. We for now have our initial implementation of the code highlighting for GCL language. We have some constructions and statements to cover yet, but the most of the GCL keywords are covered by the MVP of the plugin. By the way, we didn't cover yet just 2 and just 3 keywords, but we are in a process of doing that. For the other things, we are investigating the possibility to implement code recognition without knowing what is the extension of a file, or for example, if users use GCL members or GCL datasets, so that it will be possible to recognize the GCL code without actually asking user for clarifying what kind of code is that. Also, there will be some other things like GCL code auto-completion and suggestions on user type. And also we are planning to introduce GCL code templates so that the user will be able to select the common construction without the need to write it all by hand. Also, we are planning to introduce some other GCL features that will make it possible to interact with Mainframe directly from the IntelliJ, but these are in a planning stage also. About the GCL plugin, here you can see how the dependencies between Zowe Explorer, IntelliJ platform and GCL plugin are in here. So for the first one version for GCL IntelliJ plugin, for the latest IntelliJ, for the previous one, IntelliJ platform versions, for example, 2022.1 and 0.2, there will be two versions. We've planned two versions for now. The first one will be 0.1.0, and it won't depend on the Zowe Explorer IntelliJ. And the next version will do that, as you can see in the left side of the screen. And if we talking about the right side of the screen, there will be the both depending versions for the IntelliJ platform, starting from version 22.3 and later. So why we decided to do such difference is to test how it works without the dependency for the first version, and the next thing is to see how it works with the dependency existing. So now I want to show you how it works. For example, in here I have an instance of IntelliJ IDEA version 22.1. And here I've pre-installed the Zowe Explorer plugin and GCL Highlight plugin. And here I have pre-installed mask and for the USS path, also the filter. And in here I want to show how it's done. For example, right now we are not able to recognize the GCL, unfortunately, on the Zowe's dataset side. But if I just copy that thing inside the USS file system, let me rename that. So in here, the icon is changed, but it's not the correct one. We are planning to change it. Right now you can see that we have our GCL highlighted. It's a simple program to print hello world statement, but in here, what is interesting that we highlighting all the keywords and statements that we have in this products file. Yeah, like for example, if we try to change something, for example, job to GB, it will say that we are missing O and no such operator for GB. Okay, the same for other keywords, for example, exec. Yeah, works like that. For the inline input, it's a different color. For comments, it's also comment-like color, like for other languages. And for the 23.1 version, I also pre-installed both plugins, and let's try it in here. Yes, expected the same functionality. Also, it is possible to see the GCL in the colors we are offering if we try to download the GCL file to our local machine. So here I've opened the file that is on my machine, and in here you can see also the code highlighted with the colors we're offering. For the local one, it's easier to highlight the GCL as we have some other options. For example, if we want to highlight the GCL code in some different file that is not GCL, that has not the GCL extension, For example, let me rename that. Example. Like in here, you can see that we have other extension for the file, but if we try to associate it with the GCL file type, okay, let me see. Yeah, and like this, you can see that it's highlighted correctly. Okay, and as I said, it's not published yet. I will be presenting the same thing at the DSC call, and after that, I guess we'll publish the code for the GCL highlighting plugin in Zowe Workspace, and probably next week it will be available in JetBrains Marketplace. So that's it from me. Any questions?
Hey, that looked really good. One thing that came across my mind watching you present, so on the Visual Studio Code Zowe Explorer, they also have, no, the Visual Studio Code Zowe Explorer, sorry, doesn't have JCL syntax highlighting. That's not something it includes. I was wondering, is there any way that, any fusion of technology around things like language server parsers, or is there any separation where the same logic can somehow be shared across the different IDEs that Zowe has?
Okay, I got the point. Thank you, Joe, for the question. I know that Visual Studio Code has something like LSP, and it's a different technology for the Visual Studio Code itself. As for the IntelliJ platform, there are some different mechanisms to highlight the code you have, and I guess it will be possible only in terms of converting one technology into another, and not in terms of the same technology you install it once and use everywhere.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, then thank you, and back to you, Nick.
All right, thank you. Okay, next team is the API ML squad. Either Pablo or Shoba.
Yes, hi. I will be presenting. Let me see if I can share. Oh, I don't know. This one. Sorry, 1 second. It's the first time I'm sharing on Zoom, and I don't have it authorized here. And okay, I hope we can see my screen.
Yes.
All right. So from the API mediation layer, there's a new configuration option that we are shipping with 2.8, and that is the possibility to switch the cookie name used for an instance. Basically, before this, the cookie name was fixed in APML authentication token. This was the original value, and this could lead to problems if you had more than one instance, deployed on the same domain. So all of them could be sharing the same cookie token value, and depending on the configuration for these different instances deployed on the same server, could become a problem to manage. So now there's this option to set it up. I will be showing this on a locally deployed instance, so this is why I'm changing it in these YAML files. But just to show how this works on Zowe, on the Zowe YAML main Zowe installation configuration file, there is a possibility to set it under the gateway, and this is just a flag in the property APML security auth unique cookie, and it's either true or false. So if you set it to true, then the cookie value will be again APML authentication token, and with a dot in the middle, the second part will be that of the cookie identifier, which is a property that's already present in the Zowe YAML. So cookie, and here it is. So by default it's 1. That's why I was trying it here. The idea is that if you have a different Zowe instance, you will have a second or a third Zowe YAML, and you would set a different cookie identifier to split the cookies between the instances and they don't mess with each other. So that's the configuration value, how this looks on the deployed instance. So right now, I will start from, I already started this instance. I can start from here. I can see that cookies, I will delete them. And now from the catalog, I can log in as user and the password. And now this instance is configured as the first one. So here you can see this cookie value, the corresponding key. Yeah, so this is all from my side. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thanks, Pablo. That's great. Yeah, so for someone like myself, and I might log into like 2 or 3 or even 4 sometimes different Zowe desktops, that's gonna be great, right? Because the cookies are going to be separated. So
yeah, as long as you do it in the if these Zowe desktops are in the same domain, yeah, this could be useful for you. If they are in different domains, then yeah, the cookies are not shared among those. So each domain has its own.
Right.
But, yeah.
And by domain, do you mean like the SAFDB or the same LPAR or?
Yeah, I mean, this is on the browser level, so it depends.
On the browser level domain, yeah.
Yeah. So here, for example, for localhost, it will be just one IPML authentication token.1. So if everything is deployed on localhost, then having this .1, .2, .3 will help, because otherwise every instance that's deployed on the same domain will see the same cookie.
Cool.
And override the same cookie, right?
Right, yeah. So you log into one and then you get authentication errors and you log out of one. Yeah, okay. Brilliant.
Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So thank you. Back to Nick, right? Yep.
Yes. Okay. All right. That's basically it for the agenda. Is there anything that anybody would like to present in the few minutes we have remaining? Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, then it sounds like we can end the call for today. Thanks everyone for joining, and have a nice day.